Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are getting set up, and Sonia, our Zoom team leader, is putting us live on Facebook. So we want to give you a chance to come in, get settled, and we will be kicking off very shortly. But in the meantime, if you would like to tell us a little bit about you in the chat, we'll have a poll in a couple minutes, but tell us where you're coming from, maybe some of your interests, and yeah. So Sonia has let me know that we are now live on Facebook, so we can start for real. Welcome, everybody. I'm Sari Karp. I am the Executive Director of Sustainability Matters. For many of you, this is not your first Sustainability Matters webinar, but for those who are new to us, we are a small but mighty grassroots nonprofit based in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, literally operating across the whole northern half of Virginia at this point. But our webinars have been pulling global audiences for years now. I think we've had people from every continent except Antarctica, and we always love hearing how our Australians recycle and garden and all that and stuff. So we are here today to really answer your questions about recycling. As an environmental nonprofit, probably most of the questions that we get fall into two categories. One is, I threw a bunch of wildflower seeds into my lawn. Why didn't they germinate? And the other is all the recycling questions. Why can't I recycle all the plastic? Yeah, why can't I recycle glass anymore? Can you call and yell at the city for us? And so we explain as much as we can, but we feel that it's better to have the experts do the talking and have you be able to ask your questions directly. Really, our focus, our specialty as an organization is providing people with concrete, actionable ways to make a difference, to learn about sustainability, and to do things at home as an individual so that you do not have to wait for the government to change the laws or corporations to change their minds, but you can make a difference, and knowledge is power. So we hope that at the end of today, you will go home with a lot more knowledge about recycling than you had when you arrived. So with that, let's plunge in. Mike, talk us through the journey of a plastic bottle. When a plastic bottle gets dropped off either in the curbside bin or at the recycling convenience center, wherever you live, where's it go? What happens to it?
Depends on where you are. If you are on the East Coast, Virginia or south, a little bit north of us, but primarily Virginia or south, our biggest location would be Atlanta, Georgia, where the plastic bottles, ones and twos, are turned into carpets, hypoallergenic filling, that sort of thing. But just bear in mind the footprint of that. That single-use bottle has been purchased here in Winchester, then goes into the recycle bin. It's taken by a diesel truck to the material reclamation facility, then taken by a semi truck down to Georgia, and then processed by another set of machines. Oh, fair warning, Sari didn't mention, I'm really depressing. I try and keep it fun, but a lot of what I say is not positive.
This is true. I did forget that. You know, our organization's tagline is literally seriously making sustainability fun. And Mike just ruins that all the time. It's all right. If he gets too depressing, we'll get him talking about the worm farm in his basement and everybody will cheer up. But yeah, realistically, I think, Mike, recycling is one of these tough topics, right? It's complicated. There's no easy solution. We would love to think that we can buy as much plastic as we want to. And as long as we recycle it, zero impact. But
in all reality, recycling is a portion of a solid waste management plan. We have glorified it and we've done it to absolve ourselves of some guilt. there's plenty of great studies that show that instead of reducing our waste, if we find out that something's recyclable, we'll increase our waste generation because we don't feel as bad about it. We keep forgetting of the 3 R's, hopefully most of you all grew up with. That's the third R. First is reduce, then is reuse, then is recycle.
Absolutely. And that's a big part of the rebranding recycling education as well. If you go on any of our social media, you will see a lot of videos with tips by Kenny, who's been showing us how we can reuse things and reduce and not get to a point where we have to figure out that, ooh, it might not be recyclable. So a tangential question for you, Mike, about this plastic bottle and its journey. Most plastic bottles and plastic objects nowadays have 3 little arrows, kind of like the leaves in the Sustainability Matters logo. 3 little arrows in the bottom with a number in the middle. That's very encouraging, isn't it?
No, I hate it. Anyone that has been in the recycling industry for 3-4 days hates it as well. It was created by a lobbyist group called the Society for Plastics Industry, whom oddly enough rebranded themselves after pulling this off. You see, the chasing arrows are not trademarked. The numbers 1 through 7 designate the resin code, which is just the base that plastic's made out of. That plastic can contain 200-300 different additives to make it behave certain ways. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. It's what we would call greenwashing. It gives it the appearance that it can be recycled, but it does not mean that it actually can be recycled anywhere in the world.
So before we all get too depressed, is this the same for everything, not just plastic? Is this the same for metal, for cardboard?
Most of those don't use the chasing arrows.
No, I mean the recyclability level.
Oh, no, the recyclability is different per material. You're correct. For plastics, polymer strands 1 and 2, especially the narrow neck bottle style, that's nearly universal for collection. Plastic films, the stretchy kind, in my hometown here, Trex recycles about 50% of all of those films in the United States. Now, outside of that, other materials are hit or miss. It's where there's an industry for it. Metals, steel, aluminum, tin, they consistently hold value because they prevent mining and the increased use of diesel fuels. The waste of 1 aluminum can being put in the landfill is the energy waste equivalent of filling that can with 12 ounces of gasoline. So that makes it hold its value a little bit more and keeps it being recycled. Paper and cardboard are very similar. Now, technically, they are a downcycling. Each time that paper and cardboard's recycled, the fibers get a little more loose. So it'd go from being, say, a white paper print media to a newsprint media to tissues, toilet paper, down and down.
Right. So, as I mentioned at the top of the program, we are getting questions where people are saying, well, my city or my county won't take glass. Why are they only taking 1 and 2 plastics or only plastic bottles? Like, how can they be that way? Why would they make this decision? Don't they care? And one of the things that we are constantly explaining, I think, Mike, you just touched on, it's not always their decision. This is a market. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and of how the market works? And
yeah, there's a couple of different players, and so each one kind of has an effect on the rules. We could start with your hauler, whoever's moving that material. They're going to be limited by the containers and the capacity that they're moving. For example, we have dual stream where I'm from, where the plastic bottles and metal cans go together, the paper and cardboard go together. Because they're going 2 separate places, it's 2 separate trucks. And we're kind of limited to that capacity. If we wanted to add a third material stream, we couldn't, we don't have a truck for it. Some locations have private haulers that have their own material reclamation facility. So they put everything on one truck to save having that second truck on the road and to process everything at their location. So that's the second player in the game, the material reclamation facility. They sort out all of the materials that go in, and they kind of dictate what they're going to accept, because they're paying their labor and their machines to separate these materials out. Then they're going to package, bale, and resell them to whichever manufacturer. But if they're getting stuff that they can't sell, it's going to end up in the landfill, which they are going to have to pay for. So they don't want to receive materials that are going to cost them money. And that's, being a business, it's not a moral judgment. It's, just a financial thing. So then the final player in the game would be the markets that purchase it for manufacturing. We already talked about paper and its downcycling through the process. Then there's aluminum, steel, tin. They tend to go back to specific metal manufacturers. Plastics, talked about where they go. And all of them, you will see on the manufacturers a percentage of recycling, or comes from post-consumer materials. It adds a value to their product, and that's why they're willing to purchase it. Sometimes it adds enough value that they will pay more than for the virgin materials. Glass used to be that way, as a matter of fact, but now glass has switched the other way, and it is less expensive for them to purchase brand new glass than recycled glass.
So something that seems to be a theme here is that it really matters where you live. And, most of us live in Virginia. Lauren lives in Atlanta, and she and Allison are originally from Maine. I'm originally from Massachusetts. I know someone in the chat mentioned that he's from California. In New England and California, there's a lot more recycling than there is in Virginia. In Europe, there is a lot more recycling. We get some comments on the TikTok videos and the Instagram reels that Kenny put from Europeans saying, well, no. We do it very differently. Even within Virginia, Mike's from the city of Winchester. That's located in Frederick County. He doesn't have the same rules that Frederick County does, or that the next county over where I live, Shenandoah County, has. Why does this differ so much? What are the factors that drive those differences?
The first factor for a locality for offering the service is going to be financial. They need to get their most bang for the buck, especially when using taxpayer money. When I spoke of the difference of hauling types, that's what makes our program different from Frederick County. Their hauler will haul a container that has each strand of material separated out. So they have more value, more return on that material than we do with it all mixed together. They'll generate, a few cents on the ton from their material, whereas we'll pay $105 a ton to have it processed. So why does it differ everywhere? Same thing. Yeah, and also it could be market availability. In our local area here, most of the East Coast, it's pretty easy to recycle the thin plastic grocery bags. Again, we should avoid using them if we don't need them. However, they exist, and as they do, our location to the tracks makes it very easy. California, on the other hand, doesn't have that benefit. That's why they were one of the first ones that had to get rid of the plastic bags, start the plastic bag ban. Kenny, if I can pick on you, sorry. One of the links I shared from the YouTube, I believe it was the one with my friend being interviewed. If we could share that with everybody, don't watch it now, but it'll give you a little more in depth of what I'm talking about. And it also has some interesting things. This was made about the time that California was bragging on its 90% diversion rate from its recycling materials not going to landfill. And then when they did an actual waste audit, they found that it was fewer than 30%. All of that material was going to the material reclamation facility, but it was being sorted as trash because it was trash. It wasn't recyclable material. Then for other places like in Europe, so again, starts with financial. They got together with their taxes and they said, we need to conserve the land. We don't want this material being landfilled. We want it to be recycled. So the country by country, they've purchased the solid waste infrastructure. Very little, if any, is run by the private sector. Almost all of it is the government sector. So they can dictate their own prices because they're the ones collecting the taxes. And if it costs them money instead of generating money, that's okay because they're providing a service in return for the tax money. Now, don't be fooled by some of the numbers that you see coming out of Europe. They are huge in incineration, especially for the production of electricity. And they will include that in their recycling numbers. So just.
Yeah, recycling means different things to different people. And wherever you live, this is actually something that you need to become very informed about your own locality's rules, or if you're dealing with a private contractor that's picking up your recycling, what their rules are, what they can accept, how they need you to sort it, right? So
Oh, I see somebody in the chat. I hope you don't mind. Prince William County, we no longer have curbside glass recycling. That was just as I was talking about with the glass recycling here on the East Coast. It's cheaper for them to purchase the raw material than recycled material. The county landfill will accept glass directly that they'll crush and use for road construction and to mix with asphalt. Yes, and also into concrete for art installations, mulching, and a whole bunch of other things. Winchester, oh, that's weird. Sorry, I'm very fascinated with my new background. There we go. Winchester has done the same thing. We've purchased that machine so that we can crush it into sand and aggregate for a reuse. And as of this morning, we had enough of a stockpile built up. We're going to open it up to the public and it'll be free. I mean, it was their glass and it's their tax money for them to come and take and hopefully share pictures of how they're using it so we can encourage more use of it.
That's very exciting. Yeah. So it is an industry, I think, that the technology is constantly advancing and you're pushing that, right? One of the questions that we get a lot and is about one technology in particular, compostable plastic. How does that work? Isn't this great? Okay, I'll get compostable plastic and I will just throw it in the trash and it'll break down and it'll disappear into nothing inside the landfill. Mike, tell us about that.
So the landfill is not a compost pile. It is made to not compost materials. It's supposed to be dry entombment. That's the intention and the engineered design. I like to think of it as my junk drawer in my kitchen. You put all your stuff in there and close it. One day you can open it up and get stuff out if you want, but primarily it's just to have somewhere to put things. It's not going to turn into compost. If it does, it's going to generate methane, which is detrimental in the landfill. Some of them will recapture it for electricity. Some of them recapture it for flaring. But just to be a permitted landfill, there has to be some sort of recapture process. Otherwise, the amount of methane that comes out of solid waste management would be worse for global warming than all of the carbon across the world. I think I got
compostable plastic is compostable, but it's not going to compost spontaneously in the landfill. And it's probably also not going to compost in your own backyard pile, right? Or at least not most types of compostable plastic.
I mean, it depends how skilled you are in the backyard. What makes something plastic compostable? To make that claim, it actually has to be verified and it's composted in laboratory settings, specific temperatures, specific time frames. Maybe you can hit in the backyard. Maybe it has to be something that goes to an industrial composter. And that's when you can get into the two different industrial composting types, and some will take some compostable materials, some will take others, because some are liquid and some are aerated. So just like with recycling, if you're going to purchase these materials, Yeah, you need to know where they're going. Otherwise, it's just a greenwashing claim.
So it's complicated. And it depends on where you live. But the good news is that either your private recycling contractor who picks up your recycling or your locality should have information on their website really available about what they can take, what they can't take. Most of them, I would say, are pretty good about answering these questions. But individuals still do bear quite a bit of responsibility for recycling right or recycling wrong. And so something that I hear Mike talk about a lot, and pretty much everybody in the recycling industry, is the aspirational recyclers, the wishful recyclers. I'm suspecting that there are going to be some of those here. I was one myself once. What's an aspirational recycler?
And that's where you want something to be recyclable. So you include it with your recycling, regardless of whether it actually is recyclable or not. I think I saw somewhere in the chat about those, the plastic clamshells, like for blueberries and mushrooms and other things. We found a lot of that in the recycling. It's not recyclable. It's not a plastic that the material reclamation facility wants, but we feel like it should be. So we put trash in our recycling.
Mhm.
This is where I start to get really negative. So let me put
All
this
right,
in.
tell us the worst case scenario. Like, I feel like styrofoam should be recyclable. So, and it's your responsibility, Mike, as the recycling department, to figure out what to do with it. So I'm going to motivate you by throwing my styrofoam in with my recycling. Are you going to figure out what to do with it?
No, for my division, we'll put a sticker on your bin and say, sorry, we couldn't take it because we're not taking trash with our recycling. Other locations, they will take it and then they pass the problem on. It's crushed up in their machines. It contaminates the rest of the recycling. The contaminated load goes to the material reclamation facility, which may reject some or all of the load. Then once they're able to process it, then all of that material that's contaminated, whether it's just the styrofoam or what it's spread amongst, is landfilled. So you can even ruin somebody else's recycling with your contamination.
And so that's the worst case scenario, right? That you're not just polluting your own recycling, but you're polluting an entire load. And everything goes to the, even if everybody else recycled perfectly, it goes to the landfill because of your aspirational recycling.
It can, it just depends on the
Worst
contamination.
case.
Yeah. If you put a plastic bottle in your paper, that's not going to, explode the machines. If you put a milkshake into your plastic, yeah, that's going to mess up a lot. So for my negative side, for everyone here, I know this becomes like a personal, individual thing. We do bear responsibility, but keep it within perspective. The majority of the waste that's generated worldwide comes from corporations, not from individuals. The majority of the waste, so of that's generated that does not get recycled, composted, etc., it's also coming from corporations. It's easier for them to write a check than to have to deal with the problems they're creating. Also, I'd say 99.99% sure the material you are looking to recycle that you feel responsible for, you purchased from a company or corporation. That bottle of water that you purchased because you wanted the water, not the bottle. But they sold you their trash, their problem. So that's my little soapbox spiel for that. And while we should be aware of our portion of it, we should also be aware of how to do it correctly. And we should be influencing these organizations and corporations where most of us work to start handling their waste properly.
Yeah. And that's a key issue for our audience. Our audience wants to know what they can do. Mike has just been, his usual depressing self about the state of the industry. But the silver lining is that you do, as individuals, have agency. You can start by reducing, not buying the plastic bottles of water. First, have your reusable bottle. Make sure that you live that zero waste style as much as you realistically can. Reuse as much as you can. And then if you get to the point where you're recycling, make sure you're recycling right, you're recycling responsibly. And as Mike said, you're asking the tough questions. You're asking the tough questions of your school, of your workplace, of the places that you shop, of the restaurants where you eat. What do what do you do with this plastic cutlery, with the straws, with why are you providing these? Would you consider not providing these, or providing, say, paper straws, or no straws unless people ask? Straws are kind of the classic thing, but similar obviously with the styrofoam pickout containers. And on a bigger level, as Mike said, a lot of it's happening at the corporate level. So ask the questions of the corporations that you buy from, that you do business from, and ask them the manufacturers, right? Can you use sustainable packaging? Sustainable packaging is improving constantly.
And let them know why you made your purchase choice. Call them out on either an email or a social media post. Hey, I stopped buying your pickles because they only come in lead radioactive cans that I can't use. Let them know why.
Right. Yep. Don't be shy about that. And also potentially reach out to your legislators, depending on where you live. And if this matters to me, what can we do to move our city, our state, our country in a better direction?
Oh yeah,
Will it happen
100%.
overnight? No, but with a critical mass. If you're a student, and I know that we have some young people here and some students, and we work really closely with a number of schools, Mountain Vista Governor's School, a local magnet school in Virginia that has a strong ecology focus, is a partner on the rebranding recycling project as well. You can see some of the kids from there in the social media videos that Kenny's been filming. Collectively, these young people can exert some pressure and can make a difference, as can, of course, people living.
And I can testify to the success of that. We would not have our glass recycling machine, the pulverizer, if it were not for our citizens contacting their local representatives and saying, we want this, and spend our tax money on this.
And that's the bottom line. It's your city, it's your state, your country. You get to have a voice in those decisions, and to speak up. And in the meantime, reduce, reuse before you get to the recycling angle. Mike, before we turn this over to audience questions, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you wish I had?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Other than the people's service provider, where else can we go for more information? And to that, Kenny, I got to pick on you again because I sent you all the stuff. There's a wonderful website / movie / YouTube series / book, I think. They do a lot of multimedia stuff called The Story of Stuff. It's a nice overall introduction, and it also does material specific ones. They're a little mean to governments. My specific folks don't like me to endorse them, but they're not saying something that's untrue. It's just not the most kind way of saying it. The other one was from this morning. So as much as I vented about the chasing arrows, finally, after 40 some years, the EPA has weighed in and said, we should trademark those chasing arrows, or at least regulate who is using it, because it should only be there if it is a true claim for recycling. So I think I sent you a news link on that one. If you don't like the news source, that's fine. The first 3 sentences, I believe, first paragraph anyway, has the link to the full report and memo set out by the EPA. If you want to read the article, great. If you want to go direct to the source, it's there too.
Fantastic. All right, we open it up to questions. Zoom team.
Got a couple of questions from Facebook, so I'm gonna just pop those in there to start off with. One is, how do we encourage reduction and reuse of waste while keeping equity in mind? This person says, I know most people who are cognizant of the 3 R's may be more affluent than those generating more trash. How do we even that out?
It's person by person and material by material. It's one of the reasons I'm not in favor of disposable bans. These plastic materials exist for a reason. Straws that are disposable for people that have communicable diseases or have limited mobility, and they need that additional option just to participate in society like the rest of us. Now, do I need one? No, so I shouldn't use it. That won't be a matter really of, in my opinion, equity. If you need to use the material, use it. If you don't. So far as affordability, I do see that a lot with the plastic bag bans. If you're someone that's riding a bicycle to a grocery store, reusable bags are not going to be your friend. Backpack, maybe. If you're somebody that's going on a bus or to a bicycle, plastic bags are much more convenient than the reusables, and they're going to track less materials into your home. So again, if you can, great. And if you can't, don't. We've gotten into the idea that there's going to be a silver bullet that we can all do, and there's not. We each need to be able to do what we can do. Putting all of our eggs in one basket is what has created this waste problem, saying that plastic was better than paper and paper was better than metal. We need all of the materials, we just need to use them responsibly.
And I think that something that we've found in our educational programs, including some of the ones that we've done jointly with Mike in the city of Winchester, is that there are low-hanging fruit in some of these spaces. So for a lot of these underserved communities, low-income communities, there's this prevailing view that sustainability is expensive. Sustainability is only for rich people with a lot of time and a lot of money. And some aspects of sustainability, like buying a Tesla, totally true. But there are many things that actually will improve your life, improve your household's bottom line, and also help the planet. So for example, the Preserving for the Perplexed series that we did last year, which is on our website, Sonia, maybe you can put the link in, has a number of videos how to, and one of the most popular was yogurt. Mike made vegan yogurt. One of our people made dairy yogurt. Yogurt is one of the worst offenders in terms of plastic that can't be recycled. It usually comes in single serve containers, right? It's number 5 plastic, ends up in the landfill, and it's pretty expensive. It is also super easy. It takes about 10 minutes to make your own yogurt. Mike costed it out in the video, and it cost, what was it? Something like 1/5 the price. And you don't have all those weird additives that you don't know what they are. You don't know how to pronounce them. You choose your own flavors. It tastes much better. This is a win-win. This is an easy way to keep that waste out of the landfill and save a lot of money. So there are things like that I think that by communicating and by providing that knowledge, we open those doors.
And Katrina just put, we need more accessible zero waste education. I agree. We also, in my area, have gone to a tiered waste service. So you pay for your trash collection, but you pay based on your volume. If you have the largest container, it costs the most amount of money. If you have the smallest container, it costs the least amount of money. And that encourages the waste reduction in people. And we're here to help them. If they want to have a 35-gallon container and a 6-person family with 2 dogs, hey, I'm in. Let's see what we can do.
The second question from Facebook is Virginia more of an importer or an exporter of trash? And how does that have an effect on recycling and reduction and reuse efforts?
Touchy subject.
It's Mike's personal view and professional view differ on this subject, so I end up a bit conflicted. I don't feel like we should be importing any trash until we are handling our own. However, a lot of the waste places are they're privately owned, and I'm not comfortable with a government regulation, on top of what they're already doing and limiting their business. So I'm of two minds there. As for our state, we import a lot. We're really close to New York, New Jersey. We have a great rail system for trash, not people. And that makes it really cheap to bring it here. And our tipping fees are cheap. At one point, ours were as low as $20, and New York's was as low as $115. So it was cheaper for them to collect it, put it on a train, ship it to Virginia, and put it in our landfill.
Yeah, it is a little bit disturbing, and I know one of Sustainability Matters core projects is called Making Trash Bloom. We plant native wildflower meadows on top of trash cells at landfills. And we've been piloting this in Virginia, but it's starting to expand beyond Virginia. Recently, I was having a conversation with a landfill in Massachusetts that wants to make trash bloom. And I knew that we were an importer of trash. I didn't quite realize the extent until I was like, yeah, your state takes all my state's trash, typically. So it's yeah. Anything else from Facebook, Sonia? They're up. Most of it. Okay.
All right, where to next?
Yeah, what have we got here?
We do have some other questions that came in through Q&A if you're up for them.
All right.
All right, how about certain states, money is paid for cans such as Coca-Cola. If they are returned, is this an effective strategy?
Yeah, that's the bottle bill, and that is state specific instead of federal. And each state has a percentage. All right. So the bottle bill exists everywhere. Now, how that money is applied is different. In some states, it's directly back to the consumer. That's the redemption. You purchased this bottle, you paid the extra tax on it, you return this bottle, you get that tax back, or a portion of it. In our state, not so much. In our state, it's given out by population via the Department of Environmental Quality and a non-competitive grant. Some of the funding goes to the competitive grant, which is part of how we're here today. But that's what makes it different is the decision makers say, oh, it makes more sense to give 5 cents back to each person, or, oh, it makes more sense to spend $6,000 at a community level. Which one's better? In my opinion, it is better for the consumer to see it directly. You don't get as much bang for the buck environmental benefits, but the cost is transparent and visible to each consumer. I can never tell if I'm going too fast for Allison or not.
Up more. Okay. How about my least favorite question, but what percentage of materials that we recycle, bottles, plastics, etc., actually get recycled?
So that's a figure that is wildly variable. each community, each hauler is very, very different in it. I can speak to my community, but that may not be the truth for all the ones around. As a matter of fact, in the county surrounding me, there was a private hauler when the recycling prices just tumbled. They were terrible, terrible. He had the contract for several housing communities and HOAs, and he went before them and the board of supervisors, and he said, I know you guys are paying me to pick up the recycling, but I'm going to landfill it because I can't afford to recycle it. I will keep charging you, but I'm not going to do it. There was outrage, and yet he still has the contract and he's still operating that way. So for them, zero. There's other communities that they went to single stream, and even though some materials can no longer be put in the stream, they still let it go in, and they pass the problem on to the material reclamation facility and on and on. Yeah, it really depends on the community. For Winchester, ours is pretty low. We end up with some plastic film contamination in our paper, and tonnage wise, it doesn't sound like a lot because the paper is heavy and plastic film is very light. But the problem of it is still very large, even though the percentage is very low. I know I didn't give you any direct numbers there, but I hope that's what you're looking for. Speak to your hauler, speak to your material reclamation facility, ask them. Depending, I think we said most of the people were in the Shenandoah Valley, Northern Virginia area. The biggest material reclamation facility we have is in Manassas. On the east coast of Virginia, it's down by Tidewater, I believe. They're great people, call them. There's another single stream down by Roanoke. Talk to your hauler, what they pick up, where it goes. Call them, say, hey, how much trash do you get in there? How much wish cycling do you get in there? And they'll be glad to tell you about it because they don't want it.
All right, next. What do you foresee the landscape for recycling looking like 10 years from now? I know it's difficult, but what's your best guess?
Oh, man. In 10 years, we're probably going to be switching to more fuel-based alternatives. I foresee a lot more plastics being designed to be turned into jet fuels, maybe automobile fuels. I'm not a huge fan of that, but regardless, I think that's where the industry is going to be going. I would like to say that we'd be going to more of the microbial and fungi packaging. See some awesome results of that. You don't even have to attempt to compost the material. You can just drop it on the ground and the mycelium do their work. There's, for the last 10 years, been rumors of biological life, bacteria primarily, and enzymes eating plastic. Maybe it'll come around in the next 10 years. Hey, we'll see.
That's what we need to push for. Mushroom plastics, right?
Oh yeah, I love those. The mushroom plastics, the mushroom papers. But I'm a mushroom person, so I'm biased.
Sorry, there was a follow-up question here. Somebody was saying about the berry containers, that they are labeled with a 1. How can they label with a 1 if not recyclable?
Because there's no one to stop them. I mean, I can say it as nicely as you'd like, as diplomatically, but that's what it comes down to. There's no one verifying their claims. The chasing arrows have no relevance to the number, and the number, in my opinion, has no relevance to the plastic. Because a number 1 clamshell that held berries is different than a number 1 plastic that held your bottled water or soda. One can be recycled, one can't. Every time I see it, and this is probably inappropriate, so I apologize. But every time I see it, it hits me as that, tell me you're a liar without telling me you're a liar, you know?
Any other open Q&As?
Got a few more.
Go for it.
When I put my plastic bag in those recycling containers at the grocery store, does
Yeah.
it get recycled?
Yes. The majority of those are for Trex, and they've opened a couple of facilities, so they're now nationwide. At one point, over 50% of the plastic bags that were recycled in the United States passed through the facility here in Winchester. That is a massive number. Now, it can still be contaminated. That's one that you'll notice those containers are separate from other materials. They go through a chemical process to recycle those films into their new material, Trex boards and decking. And that chemical process, it's science. Like this is specific. Even water can act as a catalyst to cause fires or explosions, let alone, the people that leave entire turkeys in there. Not an exaggeration, like true thing that happened. 2 tracks with plastic bags. Yeah, the recycling and contamination is still a problem. A little more of a problem since that's going direct to the manufacturer. But yes, as long as no one's put a turkey or poured a milkshake into that container, it'll be recycled.
Awesome. Okay, here's the next one. Is it possible to help press for regulations that companies buy used versus new pellets of plastic?
Yes, it is also possible, and there's templates around the United States for requiring a certain portion of their materials to be made from post-consumer. I believe it is still federal standard that all governmental agencies, state, local, etc., their paper products must contain 30% post-consumer recycled paper. That's just an internal regulation they put out. We could call our decision makers and our legislators and expand that, or expand that to other materials. There are unintended consequences, so do look at the whole cycle. Don't call them up and say, yes, we need regulation that this material can only go here, and there is no here. Because then you're putting a burden on a company that may just stop producing entirely.
All right, how much time do we have? I'm gonna do 2 more.
Go for it.
Okay. Did Mike say Trex recycles plastic shopping bags in Winchester? Why then doesn't Winchester recycle these bags in home collections?
Yeah, for that contamination. I can't put it in the recycle bin because it cannot come into contact with the other materials. If it goes in the recycle bin, then it's going into my truck, and then it's going to the material reclamation facility. That plastic's contaminated every step along the way. Because it's going direct to manufacturer, it has to stay pure, and it can't even come in contact with rainwater. Like, it must be just that strand.
All right, I think you sort of already touched on this one, but I think it's an important one. What suggestions can you give us for how to approach these issues with our legislature language-wise? Are there words or phrases we should focus on or avoid? Does it matter which vocabulary we choose depending on their political affiliation?
I haven't thought of it in terms of political affiliation. When I talk to politicians, I'm a member of the Virginia Recycling Association, and I'm on their board of directors. And when I talk to legislators, I try and feel them out first. I don't care what letter is behind their name. Some are socially motivated and some are financially motivated. And so whichever way they fall in that, that's the way to address them. If they're a socially motivated person, you talk about sustainability, equity, the health of individuals, microplastics, and focus on those things. If there's somebody that's financially motivated, you talk to them about short-term costs versus long-term costs. Sure, it could be cheaper to put something in the landfill today, but in 40 years when that landfill closes, how much more are we going to be paying to ship it somewhere else? Oh, also, they tend to really like that. Why do corporations get to outsource their costs to the public? Why does the taxpayer have to cover the burden of their waste?
Good point. And I would say, you know, what we've learned running an organization focused on sustainability is never assume. Yeah, never assume because of somebody's politics or because of their backgrounds that they don't care or that they're coming in with a particular viewpoint. I think that if we find the right entryways, right language, like I said, the right motivations, eventually you can convince most people. That's what we're going with anyway. Do we have any more pressing questions, or are we pretty much good? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Sonia's just put up a poll. Please let us know how the webinar was, and we hope that you will join us for future programs. Follow along on our website. Most of you are on our email list at this point. Got the email, check out social media. We would love it if you join us as a member, support these programs and make it possible for us to keep bringing this kind of useful, actionable information, keep bringing you people like Mike who are willing to take all the tough questions.
And I'm sorry, I haven't been keeping up with the chat well, but there's some really good things in here. The We Need More Open Air Markets by Emily, where you can take your own containers back in to fill them up. Yes, in Virginia, it is a family relative of mine, but there's a reuse store down towards Harrisonburg, Stanton, just for that purpose. What's the best way to force manufacturers to build in the disposal cost into the price of their products? Require them to. That's why we have a bottle bill, is they are required to charge that. In the next 10 years, we'll see that for electronics. We're going to see that for all sorts of additional materials. What's the buzzword for it now? Oh man, I can't remember the buzzword right now, but there's legislation in 3 states to make them account for the entire process of their materials, including disposal. So extended producer responsibility. There it is. EPR, extended producer responsibility. That's the best way to force manufacturers to build in disposal.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for coming. You were a great audience with great insights, great questions. And we hope that we are leaving you on as positive a note as possible, given that the complex state of the recycling industry, and that you feel that you have more knowledge that you can use to join us in making this world a better place. Right?
Sorry, I'll call out the chat again. I'm sorry. There's Dan, EPR. Yes, Dan. Hi, Dan.
Dan knows all about it. Dustin. Thank you all